Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports columnist, joins us on 365 Sports with Paul and Craig. David Smoak as well. Dennis, thank you very much. And so now the Big Ten and the SEC, we know they run college football and the revenue sharing. So thank you for your time. How would this work and how would this affect the other schools in the Power Four?
You know what, Smokey? I don't even know to stave off the House lawsuit and some of these other antitrust lawsuits with a hit to the budget to settle this got to be billion-dollar lawsuit. Yeah, hit them like 15 to 20 million per Power Four budget. You're asking about the group of four; they wouldn't be on the hook for any money. It was the NCAA and the Power Four that got sued. But there are so many questions going forward. This has been percolating for a while, by the way. This is going to come. But it's getting urgent. We're 9 months away from this House lawsuit, which, just to inform the listeners, if the NCAA allows it to go to trial and loses, which probably will, would cripple the NCAA in college football. It would be a $4.2 billion judgment, tripled in these kind of cases, in antitrust cases. So they are talking. There's so many pieces put together. It's really complicated.
Dennis, how much would the other conferences, again, like be able to follow suit, but also not have the ability to match those funds?
Yeah, we are. Are we having a bad connection?
I got you.
Okay. All right.
I got you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So if you're the Big Ten and SEC, obviously you can offer, like, if you're giving a percentage of revenue, that can be a bigger percentage than the other conferences. How do they stay competitive in this?
How do who stay competitive?
The ACC and Big 12 in particular.
Well, right now we're just talking about what percentage of the athletic budget it would take. I think I figured out at one point at Penn State it would be like 3% to pay this money. At Ohio State it would be like 8%. They can afford it. But what you're talking about is how does it impact Kansas? How does it impact Kansas State? I suspect Baylor will come up with the money because they have it somewhere. But there are ways to do it. I wrote a story, I can't remember, it was earlier this year or maybe last year. I mean, you take out a 30-year note, not unlike when you're buying a house, 20-year note. You get a bank to loan you money and banks will do it very easily because they know these athletic departments are backed by universities. And universities aren't going bankrupt. I can't remember the last one that did. So they know sooner or later that, these schools are good for the money. So they're going to get the money some kind of way. But number one, does it stop all these lawsuits in their tracks? And the early indications are that it doesn't. And if you're going to give this much money to a settlement and then, then it goes to the players, don't you want something in return? Like roster security, like let's say they say, give us 2 years. I think that's reasonable because we all know it's wild, wild west in NIL. 2 years. Okay. Who are you asking? There's no players association. There's no central bargaining unit. That's why this thing is so up in the air. It's a lot of money, but I think these schools want something for it besides settling a lawsuit.
Dennis, and to be clear, you mentioned, just in general, the cap that was, I guess, talked about just in the various reporting of up to $20 million. Yeah. Does that not also then beg a question of, can you have a salary cap if they're not employees? And how does that part of this whole equation work? Or would that be where the antitrust exception that you're banking on, you're wishing and you're praying for comes into play to help resolve that problem for you? Because otherwise, it seems putting a salary cap is just asking for more lawsuits.
Yeah, if you cap income for any individual player, that's a non-starter. That's an antitrust violation on its face. So, yeah, I've seen tweets and talked to people this afternoon. They're like, none of this addresses the fact that you're still going to need intervention from Congress to get this done because you are using the word cap, and you absolutely can't use that word, in trying to distribute this money. So, yeah, you're right. There's so many open holes in this thing right now that I don't know where to start. I think it's progress. I think it's something they absolutely have to do. but there's a lot to go. We've only got 9 months for that trial.
I saw some of the quotes. Jeffrey Kessler. The thought is it's $1.4 billion. The one lawsuit, and it could go as high as if they go to jury. Dennis, it could be $3 or $4 billion if they lose the case.
The damages sought for it's a class action, so there's a class of athletes who they say are owed past revenue from media rights, stuff like that. I think I quoted USA Today at one point as saying there are 7,000 players in that class. So the damages being sought are $1.4 billion. In the legal world, if you lose an antitrust lawsuit, then the damages are tripled. And so 1.4 times 3 is $4.2 billion. So this is rolling the dice. You absolutely can't roll the dice and try to take this to trial because the damage to the NCAA and the schools would be unpalatable. They couldn't handle it financially. So you've got to come to this sort of decision.
Now, the talk of the Super League kind of came and went, but are these the kind of offshoots of that where it's like, well, let's figure out this part of it and this part of it, and then we can start to morph into whatever college football is going to be in the future, which, Dennis, we all know kind of needs to have a completely new model.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some small way, I don't think these two really go together in this conversation. I guess there will be schools that don't opt in to paying. Maybe there's going to be tiered payments. Say the ACC and Big Ten can't afford it. Some schools can't afford it, so they had tiered payments. Well, we already know there's a separation. It's just not formalized with the SEC and Big Ten and everybody else. So what are we talking about? Not going to leave the NCAA. They're still going to play those teams. So it's everybody whining about a separation. They're not going to break away. It just is what it is. And we're going to have to live with it. They can't afford, those schools that don't opt in can't afford not doing that, I think, just because of what it would mean to their membership. You have to be FBS. You hang that shingle on your university. That impacts everything from giving to research to ability to hire the best and brightest in faculty. Just like anybody else, I suspect there's professors who'd rather, work at Penn State rather than IUPUI. And that's what the difference in some of this stuff is.
Well, and I brought this up that these schools, and let's say outside of SEC and Big Ten, the ACC's got some alphas, and the Big 12 has a bunch of schools who are spending a ton of money on new facilities and more.
Yeah.
And they're not doing this, Dennis, to be a part of playing for the FCS or some secondary level championship.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. I spoke to a group of students at Kansas yesterday and brought this up again. I think schools like Northwestern, Kansas, there's some others, Vanderbilt, which is doing a massive capital project. This is their love letter to major college football. In other words, if and when that breakaway does come, we want to be in that top 50, and here's why. We are serious about football. I went to Kansas yesterday and looked at what they've done. They basically are building a new stadium. They've torn the whole thing down to studs. They're going from 48,000 to 42. They're going to have a convention center, hotel, new football facility. It's incredible what they're doing. Northwestern is spending $800 million to build a new stadium on the footprint of Bryant Field, to the point that they're playing in they constructed a temporary 3,000 seat practice field stadium that they're going to play home games at this year. Some of the Wrigley Field too, but it's amazing the lengths they're going to. So I don't want to say this would be a drop in the bucket, but it would be some more money that they would have to pay. Absolutely.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, with us on 365 Sports.
Dennis, on just another college football note, everybody expected this transfer portal cycle to kind of go nutso, and it really it hasn't, right?
Yeah, you're right. Not very many big names. Isn't that weird? We all look. I include myself in there, and probably you guys. We all go, well, this is the end of the world. All these guys are going to transfer. There's actually less people leaving Colorado. I mean, it almost looks stable under comparatively with Coach Prime at Colorado. Bigger names haven't gotten in the portal. coaches, I guess if I had to sum it up real quickly, they've done a better job at recruiting their roster. You still have Dabo Sweeney, who says our best transfer portal's in that locker room, where he still adheres to that model, is going to keep guys. I don't know if that's going to work for him when you need a right guard all of a sudden. That's another story. But you're right. It was much ado about nothing, and it expires, by the way, the second portal, they know expires today. This is the last day, April 30th.
Do you think that you'll see, and we've had some coaches on that have said this, that we'll see less and less spring games that are televised?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of that. I mean, we had ESPN went all in with Colorado last year. Who was it this year? Fox went in with Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, that's not something I'm really.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've thought, I've gone to games and I've come away and go, that's one of the biggest wastes of time I've ever had. Some guy who's never going to play just ran for 170 yards. Number one, because you don't want to show the starter. Number two, you don't want to show your play to the opposition. So, yeah, I'm all for less spring games being on television. Actually.
Well, we bring that up because some, like Joey McGuire even mentioned, because of the transfer portal ending with mostly after everyone else is done.
Yeah.
You don't want to show some guy that might have flourished during the spring or off season.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes along with the old philosophy of those games being mind-numbingly boring because you're not showing plays and players along with it. You're right.
Last year at the Baylor scrimmage, I could not have told you what was going on. Like, I just knew, he threw a pass to this guy. Well, he scored a touchdown, but they put 2 points on the board. Like, I don't know at all what's I couldn't tell you what's happening, what kind of Stableford scoring that they've invented for this. They're fancy practices is all they are.
Dennis, last question.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just think the best thing they could do, I think, is teams actually play each other in a scrimmage or a game. That's been talked about forever, but probably won't happen.
I've never understood why, let's say Baylor or whoever doesn't play Sam Houston State in a spring game or even a scrimmage in August.
Right.
Why not, right? What would you say, last question for you, thanks for your time, presidents, ADs, and football coaches, how many of them are on board for revenue sharing, would you say?
I think I've said this for a while. I think even if they're against it, they have to accept the reality of it because that's the only way we get down this road to resolving all this madness. I've talked to ADs who for years have thought, yep, this is where we're heading. I might not like it, but you better get ready for it because if you fight it, again, you're going to end up in court or something like that. So it's coming. I've told people a year from now, we will all be talking about players being compensated. And so, again, how does that change from what's actually happening now? We're just talking about details. Instead of NIL, it's revenue sharing. It may be a mix of both. And then I said in 2 years, we won't even be talking about it. Mm-hmm. It'll be something that's just ingrained into the game. Has it done anything to impact Saturdays at all since July 1st, 2021? I would submit no.
Dennis, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, with the column earlier today and also on the show, SEC Big Ten developing plan to share revenue with players and potential landmark change to college athletics. I asked Dennis that last